streaming this.
Great.
I guess if you want, I'll go ahead and give Aaron a glorious introduction to our audience.
Sounds good.
I'll try anyways. I'll try not to butcher the super impressive background that you bring to the table here, Aaron. But all right, guys, we're here with another edition of 24 Floors Up, and we are in a midday edition. It is 1:30 here in Houston, and the third gentleman that you see on the screen that you don't normally see, his name is Aaron Ross. He's joining us from Los Angeles, California. Do I have that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
LA,
Okay.
LA.
All right. Hopefully you're staying away from those wildfires. Hopefully they're not too far from you.
Yeah. Well, they're not too close to us, but we've had some people we know lose their houses. So it's a real thing.
Such a shame. That's such a shame. Well, anyways, Aaron, like I was saying, you bring a tremendous level of experience to our audience. One of the things that I think was the most impressive right off the tops, you're a Salesforce alumni. If the story holds, you took Salesforce team, the sales growth from $5 million to $100 million. And I don't know if that was over a year or two time frame.
It's not quite, but it was when I started at Salesforce, it was about a $25 million company. And over a few years, the team and sales team and outbound process added an extra 100 million to what they were already doing.
Right.
So
I'm sure Mark Benioff really appreciated it.
Mark's an interesting guy. Yeah.
And
that was when there were about 150 people. So I started there in 2002 and left 2006 when there were about 2,000 people.
Right. No, if I remember correctly, there are about 30,000 now.
They're huge. I mean, I don't know if it's 30,000, maybe 15,000, 20,000. I mean, it could be 30 for all I know, but they're like a $10 billion company now. Revenue.
That's explosive growth.
It's a great company and I mean, great background. I just want to second what Patrick was saying. I saw that you had done the Ironman competition, survival training. You have these books that you've done. It's just amazing story it sounds like a story of adventure, just everything that you've done. I imagine you've had a fun journey along the way with all the things that you've done. Now, as Patrick had mentioned and I had mentioned in our messaging back and forth, this is a digital transformation podcast, but we're focused on sales. Patrick, you want to talk a little bit about the conference that's coming up?
Yeah, thank you, Gary. Aaron, there's 3 sponsors of our podcast. One is Digital Selling Conference. And essentially what we're trying to do is empower sales professionals, entrepreneurs, and marketing professionals to come into the sales, some call it sales 3.0, which is essentially knowing how sales has changed, how your buyer has changed, how basically the buyer journey and the new digital selling process, and how do you engage with your customers in this current business climate. And what we're doing is we're bringing 10 thought leaders in various subjects such as digital selling, digital marketing, content creation, artificial intelligence, and among other things, to one place where there'll be some really interesting corporate partners that will be able to work with these entrepreneurs and sales professionals to have one place to come together to grow their professional tool, their locker, and just make some great new relationships out of it. And the next thing is unbiased data. Gary, why don't you tell us about unbiased data?
Sure. So I have a consulting company. It's focused on market research, data analytics, and management consulting. And the way that works is we reach out to our clients, potential clients, and help them understand what they think about their business before they enter a new market. And right now we're focused on multinational and international companies that want to come to the Houston area or the broader U.S. So we'll talk to them. We'll do an interview, then we'll do a survey, and then we'll use data analytics to show them a report on exactly what their clients think about their business. And then we can provide recommendations from a strategy standpoint. Maybe that's marketing, maybe that's sales, or maybe it's some other process or operational issue. So that's what we're focused on. And we have another teammate that wasn't able to make the call today. He's actually traveling for work. He's in Michigan, and he has a sales training company that's focused on the digital aspect, using digital technologies for sales. So all of us have some form of revenue producing or sales focus within our companies. And we come together as a collaborative effort to focus on this podcast and bring very valuable content from thought leaders in the sales and digital transformation space. Now, I have a question for you. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies for 13 years.
Yep.
Before launching my consulting firm, and we went through various sales training. We went through Sandler, we went through consulting, consultative coaching type sales. We went through
value-based selling. Yep.
Yeah,
Challenger
sale.
Yeah.
And there's some common themes among all of them. Like Sandler's peeling the onion, asking more questions. A lot of them are more listening than talking. Really focus on what the client's needs are, adding value, and you hear those buzzwords thrown around quite a bit. Now, your book caught my attention, and I looked on Amazon, and there's a ton of great reviews on it. Do you mind telling us how your book and your philosophy is a little bit different than some of these other approaches that are out there?
Are you talking about which book? So the Predictable Revenue book or the Impossible to Inevitable book?
I saw both of them. I was interested in the predictive revenue. Let's talk about both of them, though.
Predictable revenue.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we start with this one, because this was the original one that came out, and they call it the sales Bible of Silicon Valley, right? Predictable revenue. Mm-hmm. And this really has some of the details around what I did at Salesforce.com. But it introduced some ideas that have changed the way hypergrowth companies do sales, at least in Silicon Valley and sort of like major metropolitan areas. So the book, there's probably there's really two key ideas. I mean, there's more than two key ideas, maybe three or four, but the two I think we want to start with and focus on are what most companies still don't do correctly. So the first is the idea that a sales specialization. What does that mean? It means most companies out there, and they've done this for so long, this is just habit, have hire salespeople, whether you have one salesperson, two, or 1,000. And they expect the salesperson to do their own prospecting, fill their own funnel, close deals, and often even manage their own accounts. Now, this is whether it was in software, I mean, this is like everywhere. And so that's sort of what we call a generalized salesperson or unspecialized salesperson. So I don't know, I don't know if that's how you guys do it or see that, but I see that constantly still, whether it's in the US or around the world. That's not how Silicon Valley does it anymore. What Silicon Valley does, and this is what Predictable Revenue introduces, sales specialization, which is really, it's a sports team analogy. If you want salespeople to prospect and do it well, it's not going to happen. A salesperson can't close and prospect and do both well and do both consistently. It's humanly impossible, except for like 1 out of 20 people. So what do? Complain that people don't do enough prospecting. It's not the people, it's like expectation that you're supposed to be closing and prospecting, both doing it well. It doesn't happen. And even if you can prospect well, you get a bunch of deals, you get too busy closing deals to prospect. So there's this revenue roller coaster. So the idea of, again, going back to sales specialization, if you want to create predictable revenue, you need to have a way to create predictable appointments. That is impossible with salespeople doing other form prospecting. The only way that works is either you have predictable lead generation. That can be through marketing. There's different ways to do it, but outbound prospecting and creating a team of outbound prospectors is one way to do it when you have a sales team. And not only that, but really the idea is you have these 4 core roles in sales. So so outbound prospecting is the first. If you have inbound leads, a separate role of inbound lead responders or market response reps or inbound SDRs. It's a junior role of people who respond to those website leads. That's the second one. The third is basically salespeople signing new customers. And the fourth are account managers or customer success. It's the roles that after you sign a customer, who supports them. Because salespeople shouldn't, except for maybe, a very small number of clients that they keep. So you specialize, you have more jobs in sales and people doing them better because they're doing one thing really, really well. Like, going back to the sports team, tell me a sports team that where there's no jobs on the team. Like everyone just does everything. Right. I don't know what one is. There's probably one out there, but you don't take a basketball team, you don't take a soccer team, you don't take a football team and go, all right, everybody go score and defend. And no, you've got attackers, defenders, midfield, point guard, whatever. You break people up into their specialties and you have systems so they can work together to run plays together. That is the model for sales, the only model that works for almost every company out there in some form or fashion to enable them to create predictable results, right? Predictable reps, predictable leads, predictable prospecting, predictable revenue, some sense of predictability. And by the way, it also means that it's easier to gauge what's working and not in sales. Because when you have people doing everything, it's kind of hard to like, well, what's not, they're not generating revenue. Like it's kind of hard to tell like what's not working. And the last thing is you create a farm team system where you can start moving junior people up through the ranks from like inbound leads to prospecting to small business sales to, you know, bigger deals, and which can be the best way to grow your sales team through the inside. So there's all these reasons to do it. There's all these benefits. There's a little bit of downside, but that's why all the fastest growing companies in the world now, they do this in some way, shape, or form.
You know, I definitely see the benefit from a corporation standpoint, because I mean, it makes perfect sense. Now I could see you probably have seen this too, the pushback from the sales side where they're like, look, you know, salespeople, they want to own the deal. They want to be the person that starts it and closes it. And I imagine if you were to tell a salesperson, you know what, you're good at prospecting, I'm not going to have you closing deals anymore. You're just going to do prospecting. I think the first question they're going to think is, how is this going to affect my income? And do you have any thoughts on that? Or
yeah, well, it's not the salespeople that complain about it, because salespeople, they're like, oh, you're going to get me appointments. Most of them. It's the executives that tend to worry. The two main concerns or worries are the first one is, hey, what if we're too small? I'm a CEO. I'm the only one selling. I only have one salesperson. Like I can't hire more people. So you still apply, the principle is focus. So you still apply the principle by saying, okay, if you are a CEO and you do, the thing you're not getting to is prospecting, or maybe the thing you're not getting to is customer success. Whatever that thing is you're not getting to, you have to block time on your calendar to do it. So you specialize your calendar to apply the principle of focus, having a block of time, at least for let's take prospecting, because with prospecting or closing, you need blocks of time. You can't just do a proposal 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. You can't build a list or prospect in you just can't do it very well. It's like writing for me, at least. I can't write. I can jot notes down in a few minutes, but I can't write in a few minutes here. I need blocks. And most people that I know of are like that. And prospecting, that's what works. So it's time. The second concern is, well, I don't want my customers, right? I want a salesperson to start the relationship from the beginning and take it all the way, because I don't want them getting passed off and like, who's this, who's that? Or they've tried that and like, you know, we were just shuffling customers around too much and they didn't like it. Well, the thing is, first, when you have these specialized teams, again, soccer team, you don't say, hey, do all the soccer players want to take the ball from their net to score on the other side? They might want to. Like, could that be cool? Is that realistic? No, it's not. And for a salesperson, they really don't. There might be sometimes the salesperson wants to, but it's the executives who worry about it, which is more of an issue. And what I say to them is, right, in a perfect world, salespeople could do all of that from beginning to end. But realistically, it's impossible, because what happens is when a salesperson manages all these things, prospecting and closing and customers, they give great service to the people they're trying to sign, and everyone else gets crap service.
Right. Well,
so it's an illusion that all the customers are doing well because it's the salesperson doing everything. That's not reality.
Right. Yeah. Well, you made up an interesting analogy there about the soccer team. Well, you caught another soccer fan here. I noticed your Roma jacket there. That's pretty neat. Well, but the overarching theme that you're talking about is a specialization. So to take that soccer analogy again,
it's about focus.
Start to build up play with your defenders. You have midfielders who each have their own different roles to play, and then the striker finishes it. So, and that, to carry that analogy into sales, you need to have a specialty closer. You need to have a specialty prospector who's your defender. But one thing that leads to is one thing you talked about in your book was nail your niche. Can you expand a little bit more on what that means in terms of prospecting?
Yeah, I will. So one thing. And with this book, the other main idea is around prospecting, and we get into the details around how to build an outbound prospecting team that really creates predictable appointments. Because that's the team I created at Salesforce, and there's, for example, on page 41, there's a sample funnel on if you do a certain number of emails, a certain number of phone calls, you should get a certain number of appointments and a certain number of deals. So that was a big idea that this book helped make outbound prospecting popular again. I'm sure there's other things going on, but it helped, at least again, Silicon Valley, these fast growth companies, they're like, we want to do outbound prospecting. We like inbound, that's great, but even better is we have inbound and outbound because you get, two great tastes that taste great together. Why would you limit yourself? And outbound can make you a lot of money. And the details of like putting dedicated, they're usually called SDRs now, our outbound sales development reps. You have a dedicated team of them. What do they do every day? What do they do every month? How do you get that team to act like a flywheel, just churning out as many qualified appointments as you need? That was the other big idea I referred to in the predictable revenue book. But
hey, it looks like your audio or something is dropped off just a little bit. I don't know if it got unplugged or something like that.
No, it's the internet is a VoIP.
The internet's a little sketchy right now. It's having a Friday moment.
Comes and goes. So, can you hear me all right, or is it still dodgy?
It's just it's just really low.
Yeah, we can hear you a little bit. It's I don't know if you could talk into the mic or.
Yeah, is this better?
Yeah, it's a little better.
Yeah.
It's the mic. Anyway, just going.
There you go.
The other big thing was just the idea of building a dedicated outbound SDR team and defining it so it's more of like a system, an engineered system or a manufacturing system as a way to generate as many sales appointments as you need for your sales team. Like if you can do that, then you can create predictable revenue. However, there's companies who've built that team and struggled. So the one chapter that was not in the predictable revenue book, because that book's been out for a few years, and since then I learned about, and you mentioned this idea of like nailing a niche. So the chapter that wasn't in that book that should be was in the first of a new book called From Impossible to Inevitable. And that's a lot of syllables, from impossible to inevitable. And that's why part one of that book, it's like a growth Bible for more C-level executives and managers. Like, what are the few key things that you can do to really get your company to grow faster? The first one is nail a niche, right? Because that's really the most common reason people struggle to grow, right? There's these 7 sections, 7 painful truths. The first painful truth is if you're struggling to grow, it's probably because you haven't nailed a niche. But really, that means is you really know which customers need you the most, not where you're a nice to have, because companies don't buy nice to have. Where are you needed, to what kind of company you needed, how do they think, like what do they care about, and then how do you message to them so they get interested in what you do. And sometimes that's easy to do, and sometimes that's very hard, depending on the company and the market. But if you don't have that, outbound prospecting or other kinds of paid marketing won't work for you.
So, Aaron, in your books, it sounds like there's a big focus on the organization, the management, putting the team together. How much do you get into the specifics of what good looks like or what great looks like, as far as the individual tasks like prospecting, scripts or that sort of thing, or closing a deal and handling objections and that sort of thing? Do you get into a lot of details around that?
More of like at a high level. So I'll give you an example. Well, there's 2 kinds of details I like to get into in the books. Right? So here's the other book with the nail and niche section. So this gets into details around a sample funnel for prospectors, which is how many calls a day would they make? How many emails a week or month or day would they send? How many appointments should they be getting? So that we get into a lot of detail. How much revenue should you expect from a prospect? But I find that we don't get into like example emails that much because those always change. I would say some of the design principles of email, we do talk about, for example, they should be short and sweet. right? They generally should be something you can read basically like with on your screen without scrolling too much. Right? Text-based. Should be written in simple language without jargon. Like it's almost like you're writing. They say people who are reading cold emails, or again, whether it's cold emails or cold ads, or they're only going to give you the equivalent of like a third grade brain. So if you use fancy stuff, it's just not going to click for them very easily. So that's something we do get into. It's a bit of like understanding if you are going to make a call or email, like how do you think about the design of it? But the templates and scripts tend to change every year, couple of years anyway.
Yeah, I think one other thing that you mentioned in one of your books was how 10 years ago you could just throw an email together and make a campaign through some sort of content distribution, and it would be a success. But that's changed now. That you have to have it a little bit more carefully scripted, like you said. It should be kind of mobily minded, that it pops up on your screen and it's something easily digestible and consumable. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, again, going back to this nail and niche idea, because it's so fundamental, especially if you're in a services company. Because, as a rule of thumb, services tend to be a bit more vague because you can do a bit more. There's sort of more customization. Products, like if you're going to sell a coffee cup, it's like it's a cup. And there might be a fancy thing like it's a double cup. But if you said, we're going to sell cup design services, like, well, what exactly do I get with that? There's a lot more to it to understand what you get. So with services, it just means that it's harder to offer something concrete enough for someone else to really understand exactly what it is. Because the goal here is when people don't know who you are, they're only going to give you a tiny sliver of their attention to figure out whether or not you're interested. If you get referrals, this is where most companies, you start with referrals or relationship-based. Customers refer people to you, or you got friends. And that kind of prospect, if a customer tells, like, hey, Bob, this company's great, Gary's company's great, like, you got to talk to them. Bob will spend an hour with Gary shooting the shit for no other reason than that he was told that would be worth his time. Okay, sure. Hey, what you got? Let's sit down. Let's figure it out. I don't know what you do. That's fine. But that's the referral. You have this, this huge window of time and attention you'll get for free. But as you grow, and at some point that organic growth slows down, usually you might get to a few 100,000, a million, maybe 10 million before that organic referral-based growth plateaus. And then you're like, we have to keep growing. We want to market to people who don't know us. Maybe we're doing cold emailing, cold calling. Maybe it's some other kind of direct mail or whatever it is. But instead of this huge window of attention, you get this like tiny slice, like half a second or a few seconds if you're lucky.
Sure.
And so how do you get your message? Yes, well, you have to get to the right person and have the right kind of message that fits that little slice and get them interested and say, hey, oh yeah, this is something relevant to me. Tell me more. And it's like you can have a great business and you've been, a champion runner, but now you're going to do an Ironman. You might have that endurance, but there's a whole bunch of new skills you don't have, and it's very awkward. It can take a while to learn those new skills to hit that little window of attention.
Yeah.
So speaking of prospecting, obviously that space has changed quite a bit, at least from what we've seen over the past few years. It used to be, cold calling, and I know cold calling, some people still do that. But now with social media and LinkedIn and, third-party introductions digitally, webinars, podcast, do you have any advice or suggestions from a prospecting standpoint as it relates to digital, some of the digital things that are going on? What are your thoughts around that?
Great question, Gary.
Yeah. Like sometimes there's definitely some things that haven't changed at all and don't change at all with prospecting. So some of the fundamentals around like, who your customer is and being able to, have a human conversation with them and try to find out what they're interested in and what's useful to them. So, and a lot of things have changed a lot. There's thousands of technology apps and tools now for list building, for email sending, for calls. There's so much. I think one of the thing that I see affects everyone the most is we have this trend of information overwhelm. And it's only going to continue and get worse, which is there's more channels with more messages and more stuff everywhere, more content, right? It's like avalanche of everything. And what happens is the people you want to talk to have smaller attention spans. It's not smaller attention spans. It's like their attention gets cut up into more pieces for them to see what they want to do. Because now instead of 100 emails a day, they get 500 plus all their social things. And so a lot of what prospecting is today is trying to navigate through all this noise and stand out, not just from the people, your competitors, but from all the other messages that person gets. Which is why, again, this idea of nailing a niche, I come back to, because that's going to be something that if it was, kind of hard years ago and now it's hard today, it's going to be 10 times as hard in 5 years. There's so much options, so much content, and there's whatever niche you're in, whatever market you're in, there's 1,000 other companies like you coming. It doesn't matter what you do anymore. It's just there's so much copies and lookalikes. How do you stand out? So that's if you can do it with things like a podcast or with things like personality marketing, or whether it's like a certain kind of message, whether people, I do my own art on the books. And so there's art with these books. A lot of ways you can stand out, but that's really like one of the things that will differentiate companies when they grow is their ability to stand out from everyone else that sounds, looks like them.
So it sounds like, based on what you're saying, you have all these platforms out there. You have all these forms of technology to reach people, but you have to get so specific in your niche that it just basically cuts through all the noise because it is so specific. Is that what you're saying?
That works the best. And it doesn't mean your company has to be, we have this company and we're going to change the whole company. It might be campaign by campaign.
Okay.
It might be like, for example, we have, so our business, the predictablerevenue.com business, we help companies build outbound programs. Whether you need us to outsource, do prospecting for you, or whether you're ready to hire a team and we can tell you how to do that, we help you make money through outbound prospecting. And the companies we see do the best in general are the ones where they have like a really clear differentiator, either at the company level or when they're running campaigns. They can really point to, I'll give you an example. There's a company called Cheeky Monkey, right? And they do website design.
Yeah.
And like website design, some areas are just hard, right? Website design, and MSPs, VARs, phone system companies, creative agencies, digital agencies, just because there's thousands of people like that, and they all sound the same, and they also tend to have like long-term contracts, but whatever. But this company, Cheeky Monkey, shocked me because they did really, really well with outbound prospecting. We did the prospecting for them, and it's not because two things. They focus just on companies using Drupal, which is the technology platform, and they only focused on nonprofits. So it made it really effective to go, hey, here's the nonprofits who use Drupal, and here's what they need because they know the specific, features, functions. They've got case studies that sound just like those customers. There's these other nonprofits on Drupal we help. So it just was like a radio station. They tuned right into 101.3. It was like so easy for the prospects to like get it. They tuned the dial right in for them. As one example.
So it sounds like you kind of have to be you got to hyper niche your segment, your market and then identify which within each little hyper segment, there's a particular form of communication, a particular way to prospect to that particular niche. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And sometimes for some companies you do have to hyper niche. Sometimes you can be more general, but I'm trying to find that balance. Where, conceptually, if you targeted 20 types of industries, you're like, well, do we build 20, do we need case studies for every single industry and overcomplicate things? You're just trying to find that balance, or how niche do you have to go to get results?
Yeah.
If you're not getting them, you usually need to go more niche. It's sort of like the first place that we send people. Probably too generic.
You have to get more and more specific to streamline, basically.
Yeah.
How many people say, well, we can help you increase revenue and reduce costs? Great. Unlike the other 50 people who say the same thing.
Right. I know. I probably say that on my website. I probably need to revise that a little bit. It's true though. It's true. You talk to everybody and they say, I'm going to help your company grow. Okay. What does that mean?
Right. Now, if you said, one more example, let's say that we can help you increase revenue by increasing your website, your website conversion rate from 1% to 2%. Right. So that's an example of when you get that much more specific, even if that's only, then it just makes it so much easier for them to say, oh, is that for me or not? And the reason people resist this is because they'll say, well, we can do so much more. Like anyone can use this. Or like, I don't want to be that small. I want to have like a bigger vision. And that's this false belief that you're not thinking small going niche, you're really getting focused. And it's like the eye of the needle. Like to get big, you got to go through the eye of the needle to get big anyway.
So I guess now with technology now you could reach so many people that you can get specific and still have a big audience for that particular niche.
Sure.
Yeah.
It might be a campaign by campaign. It might be at the company level, it might be by campaign, or there's lots of ways to do it. But ultimately, if you are running an outbound prospecting campaign that's not targeted enough, that's not messaged the right way to the right people, it's not going to work. You can argue all you want about how big your vision is and what you want to do, but ultimately, if you're not getting responses from people, if you're not growing, that's how you know.
Yeah.
One way.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, we want to be thoughtful of your time here. I know that you promised us a half hour, and I think we might have gone over that already. In closing up, I really appreciate you jumping in with us. I know you're also a father of 9, so I can't even imagine on top of all the other things and how you manage all that, how you manage that on top of it. Yeah. Amazing. Time management skills.
That'll be a whole nother podcast.
Yeah. Father of 9 podcast daily.
Oh yeah, forcing functions would be it, but you can.
Yeah.
It's an interesting life I got here. 9, didn't never expect to have a big family like that, and I only got married 7 years ago, so I went from 0 to 9 kids in 7 years.
Yeah.
Well, you're doing some amazing things, and we appreciate you dropping in to hang out with us for a little bit and sharing a little bit of your insight from the successes that you've seen across the years. We hope that we could follow up with you sometime in the near future and revisit maybe another. I know that your book, From Impossible to Inevitable, is coming out. You're republishing it?
Yeah, it's out now, but we're doing a second edition that's out, in a few months. In fact,
right.
A few days ago, but not quite sure. This is still the best book to start with for most people. We're just doing case studies, so this is still because it's really more of the entrepreneur growth book, and the predictable revenue book. Like if you already have a growing company, and you're trying to get your sales team on track. Like if you're not growing, start with this one, as fast as you want. If you are growing and you're just trying to fix your sales team, start with a predictable revenue book.
Yeah. Well, I like one of the comments that I saw, or it's one of the testimonials on the predictable revenue book said, Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone. Thomas Edison invented electricity. Aaron Ross invented the enterprise market for Salesforce.com.
Yeah. So the prospecting team opened up, then we could go talk to anyone we wanted to.
Yeah. Well, hey, congratulations on all your successes, and may it continue. And we hope to follow up with you sometime after the release of the second edition of the From Impossible to Inevitable book. Aaron, thank you so much.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
I appreciate it.
All right. You have a great rest of your time and great weekend, Aaron. Thanks a lot.
All right. Bye.
See ya.